From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode number 48. Today's show is brought to you by Harry's, an exceptional shave at a fraction of the price, Squarespace, Build It Beautiful, and Igloo, an intranet you'll actually like. My name is Mike Hurley, and I'm joined by Mr. Stephen Hackett.
Hello, Michael Hurley.
Hello, Stephen Hackett. How are you?
I'm good. I'm being blown away by a thunderstorm, so we'll see how long I can go before the floodwaters rise. But for now, I'm okay. Very thundery.
Good.
It's very thundery outside. That started going on. So
That's official weather as recognized by the Meteorological Society.
yes, thundery. I mean, you might not have heard that word if you don't have a degree in weathermanship.
Meteorology. Weathermanship, did you say?
Weathermanship.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No Federico this week.
We miss our friend. Do you guys get thunderstorms? I know it rains, but do you get like full-out storms?
We get thunderstorms, but they won't be like the ones that you get. But there is thunder and there is lightning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, every now and then we have like a bad one. But again, our now and then bad ones is maybe probably like a medium one for you, I reckon.
Gotcha.
It's like basically in the UK, we get all the weather, but none of it is really serious. But we get all of it, where not everywhere in the world gets all of the different kinds of weather. We get them all, but we just get them all in like annoying amounts because they're neither exciting or interesting. They're just all there.
Just kind of low-level annoyances as opposed to exciting events.
Exactly. Like none of the weather is ever exciting, and which makes it all annoying.
This has been a good segment on our show.
I would like to issue a personal thank you to the listeners of this show. If you remember last week, we spoke about you and your T-shirts, and I challenged the listeners of this show to buy T-shirts to take the 512 Pixels T-shirt over the 211 mark that was set by the Connected T-shirt, which was met by the next morning, which was awesome. And currently you have sold 274 T-shirts, which is a ludicrous amount of T-shirts to sell with a little computer on them.
It's exciting, so thank you for everyone who has ordered. If you have not ordered, you have a couple of days left. Please go and do so. It's a huge help, and it's encouraging to log into Teespring and see those orders come in. So it's cool.
I ordered a long sleeve. I bought a short sleeve. I didn't think I'd want the long sleeve, and I looked at the long sleeve and I was like, I want one of those. I don't have any long sleeve T-shirts. So now I have two separate orders with your little logo on them on the way, which
awesome.
I think will bring me up to 4 512 Pixels T-shirts in total.
Yeah, because this is the third one. I've done 2 in previous years. So, but none of them this successful. So, thank you to everyone. It's really great.
I would hazard a guess to say that this, if not already, will sell out both of those ones combined.
Oh yeah, it has. It has.
It has already. Okay,
yeah,
great.
It has. So our follow up this week is really pretty epic.
This is one of the greatest pieces of follow-up any podcast has ever received, not just ours.
So Federico just started texting me very excitedly the other night, and he said he was just saying, like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this email I got. I'm like, well, send it to me. So he sends it to me. And if you remember last week, we were speaking about weather, again, as we now do at the beginning of the show. And he made some claims, Mike, that were quite, frankly, ridiculous. That because you were further north and he was closer to the equator, the sun that you received is more triangular in nature, which is just nonsense.
It was one. I mean, I was only going to take him so far, and I was like, I can't keep going down this. I can't keep having this conversation. So I decided to just settle up and move on.
I mean, that's what when you're confronted with someone who's a crazy person, you just have to sometimes let them go. So
Could you please give the follow up before you say where it's come from?
Yes. So that's a good thing. So the follow up email reads as follows: the apparent shape of the sun is independent of latitude, but the curvature of the Earth far from the equator means that the sun's rays are spread over a larger area. Makes sense, right? So the sun is still the same shape that it is always. That doesn't matter, but the amount of the sun's rays themselves are, they're spread out because they're not hitting at such a direct angle, but they're sort of glancing off, if you will, over a bigger area. It makes sense. If you hold
I think of it as kind of like skimming a stone. I know
Yeah.
it's nothing like that, but that's what my brain imagines.
this person's going to email you now.
I
So
know.
you can.
Like, you can't skim the sun.
So if you hold up like a ball, like in one hand, like a tennis ball or basketball or something, and hold a flashlight, you can see this effect where the sun is more direct in a straight angle, the light, and then it sort of disperses. That's the word I was looking for earlier. The further from the center you get. This is a great email because Federico was wrong, but it's also a great email because it was written by a listener named Fraser, who is employed at the European Space Agency. Which for Americans is basically NASA in Europe. Very similar. The two agencies work together in a lot of stuff. So the ESA...
Didn't the ESA do that slingshot thing?
Yes. I think so, depending on the slingshot thing you're talking about.
There was a thing some time ago that the ESA did. This is annoying to me that I can't remember what it was, but I just remember it, at the time being like, haha, we can't do something,
I Googled the ESA slingshot, and it did not return anything super helpful. But yeah, ESA does a lot of really cool stuff. And I think follow-up is probably over now, since we had the European Space Agency weigh in on a very important topic. So thank you for the feedback, and it was a proud moment for the three of us, I think.
Yep, most definitely. It's just a fantastic piece of follow-up to receive.
Yep. So we're going to follow that. We should have ended follow-up with that, because the next one doesn't seem as exciting anymore. But this is a link over on Mac Stories from Federico. Turns out that someone has created a Beats One schedule. So we were speaking about there's no real great way to see like what's coming up, like who's on air in 2 hours at Beats One. And Mark Bouquet has written an unofficial calendar of for this very problem. So you can subscribe to it, and you can get it on your phone and on your watch, and it's pretty cool. It is user created and maintained, but if Mark stays on top of it, this should be a pretty good resource, right?
Yeah. See, this comes also meets with I received some tweets from a guy called Benji earlier, who's at the Rumbler on Twitter, and he was basically doing some digging and found out that Apple has a Heroku API, and that basically a lot of the Apple Music stuff is built on. That there's all this crazy stuff going on. That there is apparently Apple's Tumblr uses Heroku, AWS Cloud, and React.js to create their own Tumblr page.
Okay.
So, and then Mark Bouquet replied to Benji and said that was where he got that information from, to create this calendar that he's made. So, but the problem is, from my perspective, is twofold. Mark's calendar is user created and maintained. Whilst I have faith in Mark's abilities, Apple could change things, right? Or could add a new show in, or anything could happen that he doesn't know about, and or his system isn't pulling in, or whatever, or isn't updating correctly. But also more of a problem for me is I don't want this in my calendar. Like, I want to know what's coming and I want to be notified about things, but I don't want it in my calendar as a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it was just better done in the app, maybe in a way where you could, like we talked about, favorite something or have an option for push notification for music. So you're still alerted, you still know what's going on, but it's not necessarily filling up your Fantastical. Every time you open it, it's just all Beats One stuff. So I think there's a happy medium between where we are now and what Marcus created. I think it's really great, and I think a lot of people find it useful. But I think what we initially wished for, I think, is still something that they should do. I mean, they have all the data, right? It's just one of those things where it seems like they could do, Apple could do it with relatively little work. But, they got bigger fish to fry. So I always feel a little uncomfortable telling Apple what to do because they're in charge and I'm not. Anyways, so we have a little bit of a blend of a follow-up item and a mini topic. Apple Pay has launched in the United Kingdom. Apple announced this a while back, and it launched just yesterday, right, as we record this. So, Mike, have you gotten a chance to use it?
No. Basically, the situation as it stands right now is that we have Apple Pay here, but there are basically four big banks in the UK. There is Barclays, Lloyds, Santander, and HSBC. There are smaller banks. There's like a bank called NatWest, who would maybe be the fifth, but they're like the four biggest as it stands right now. Only one of them. Three of them don't have it. Only one of them do have Apple Pay. HSBC, which is one of the banks that I bank with, they pulled out in the 11th hour, and they are currently later in July is their status. And it was literally yesterday. They were they were in the list of joining. It was even in some of Apple's press materials, and even on the Apple Pay website, they're using HSBC cards and stuff like that to show things off. So they really poured out in the 11th hour.
Wow. You might still be able to use it before I can. As my credit card, Discover's going to add it. They've said later this year, and my small local bank has said the same, but have not appeared yet. You know, every once in a while, Apple adds new banks here in the U.S., and I always search that list for my bank. So you may be able to use it before me. Should be frustrating for me, at least. So yeah, I mean, do you think we talked a little bit about this when they announced it, but to recap, the UK already has a contactless system. Mm-hmm. We in the U.S. are in the Middle Ages when it comes to debit and credit card processing. So do you think that Apple Pay can take off in the UK because the environment is different already, that people are already used to this sort of thing, so maybe it'll be adopted easier? Do you think that'll hurt it? Do you have any thoughts around that?
There are a couple of interesting things. So one of the things that is difficult to nail down completely because of where it's being reported on, but I'm pretty sure I have this correct. The way this is reported in a lot of US media is, or just in some instances, and just a lot of media in general, is Apple Pay is available in these locations, right? And they've got a list of 10 or 15 locations. But my understanding is that's actually not accurate in the UK in the same way as it was in the US. Because when they announced that list in the US, it was there is a list of places where you're able to do it. And because they're the only places the terminals are. But my understanding is the list is actually longer than what Apple is showing, because it should work in most places where a contactless terminal is available, which is way larger than the list of 10 or 15 companies that have been announced. There are some that have to do some additional tweaking to their systems because they don't have the up-to-date systems. But there is actually, my understanding is, a wider breadth of places that you can use Apple Pay than what is listed officially in the Apple on the Apple website. The other thing is, so there's also been a bit of miscommunication, and this, again, it's a similar kind of thing. It's difficult to find out because Apple doesn't really have this information, and the media is difficult at portraying some of this information, in that you can only spend up to £20 a transaction in UK stores. Mm-hmm. That is true in some places, but again, not in others, because we've had the contactless system for longer. The contactless cards system, so we have contactless debit cards and contactless credit cards that have chips in them that we can use. We can beep and we can use them. That has been limited to up to £20 for security reasons, because if you drop a card or lose a wallet or something like that, people could just buy whatever they want, and there's no second factor of authentication, right? If for just a piece of plastic. But what phones have done is allow for that level to be increased, whether it's through a PIN code being entered or a password being entered via a fingerprint scanner. So there has been some work been going on for longer than before Apple Pay was even in existence, to raise that cap. And some banks are supporting that, and some locations are supporting that. So there is even another list of companies that you can use higher limits where available. So basically, the thing is, in the UK, because we already have the infrastructure, it is a lot more complex than it is in the US, because effectively Apple is leading the drive for contactless payments in the US now, where Apple is just joining the fray here. And it's one of the reasons why some banks have lost out, like Barclays we've spoken about before. They were never going to do it, but apparently there's actually been a leadership change at Barclays, and now they're like, it will be as soon as possible, we will have Apple Pay. Right, because they were just getting raked over the coals in the media, in the same way that HSBC has today, because they pulled out so late in the game. Well, they haven't pulled out; they have delayed. But they basically broke, one of their social media people broke. Not necessarily at that time they thought, and people were thinking that an embargo was broken, because someone from one of HSBC's social media accounts tweeted that, it will be live on Tuesday, when we didn't know that for sure. And basically that person had probably just been reading Apple blogs, because HSBC weren't ready, right?
Yeah.
So then there ended up being this like weird turn of events to where we are today. But to go back to answer your question a little bit more, it's difficult to say here if it will be adopted on how it's going to take off, because we are already used to doing this, and in many, many ways, it's way easier to pay for smaller items of a credit card or a debit card via contactless, because you just hold it to it and it beeps and you're done. Nothing else is happening. But like with the watch or the phone, with like the phone, you have to give authentication by the thumbprint. That slows down the process. Because this fingerprint scanner has to read. That is slower than because not only the fingerprint scanner reads, then the transaction is processed, rather than just transaction being processed with the card. And also the watch adds a little bit of like awkwardness, because you kind of have to get the wrist and you put it on.
Yeah, like that picture on Twitter earlier, right, with Tim Cook.
Yeah, so this goes back to one of the other places that you can use. So let me wrap up that point.
Okay.
I talked about Tim Cook. Basically, I think it's tough to say, because one of the things that this does is it can be a little bit embarrassing to use this kind of stuff, like because you're like putting your phone against a terminal. Because something that has become like a standard practice is, if you want to pay by card, you have to alert the cashier that you want to pay by card. And if you're paying by contactless card, what seems to have become like a social norm here is you just you just take your card out of your wallet and you like show it, you gesture towards it to the person. Like you show them the card, and then they like enable the scanner for you to beep, right? But here I'd be like, what, I showed them my phone? Like, how am I going to do this? Like, it's going to be weird, because we've got this inbuilt, like, social norm now. And one of the things about British people is we don't like to embarrass ourselves. And if we are having to fiddle, and, like, I'm putting my watch on the thing, and it's not beeping, and I'm trying, like, 3 times, like, if that keeps happening, people are going to be a bit more hesitant to use it, I think. So I think it's a bit up in the air. I think that a lot of people will be excited to try it, because it's a new thing with their technology. And I know that I will use it, because I just will use it, because I'm excited about it. I will be using it on my watch all the time, because it's just easy and awesome. Now, going back to the Tim Cook tweet. So Tim Cook tweeted earlier today about, enjoy Apple Pay UK, and they showed a picture, and this picture is people using their Apple Watches on the London Underground, because the London Underground has a contactless card entry system. We have cards that you can buy and top up with credit, and you can use them or have your travel cards on them. But more recently, you can actually just use your bank card, you just beep it, and it just debits a fare from you, like for £1.50 or something. But this is going to be able to be done with the Apple Watch and with the phone. But these barriers, these systems have been in place for years and years and years. And the way that they're built is, as you go through the barrier, the reader is on the right-hand side of you. Mm-hmm. So like you take your card and you beep the card and you go through. So the image in the press shots and what Tim Cook tweeted today is the 3 people lining up. One person going through the barriers, one person is authenticating on the barriers, one person behind getting ready. And everyone is using their watch in their right hand. On their right wrist, because that's where the reader is. But the majority of people will be like awkwardly contorting themselves to try and get through the barrier. I actually think that for the underground, I will use my phone because I will want to do it with my right hand to just place it on and go through. Because one of the things about these barriers is speed is of the essence. There are like lines and lines of people, and sometimes you've got like two of these things, and people just beep in and walk in, beep, walk. Like you just got to keep it moving because it's London. So I'm interested to see how that's going to shake out, but that did make me smile at the time.
Mm-hmm. The thing that I think about in the photo is that this is a two-handed operation, right? Because you have to use Apple Pay on the watch. My understanding is you have to hold down or press the button on the side, and if your hands have something else in them, like if you have your pass, your phone, your right hand, something in your left hand, that's okay. But with so many other things with the watch, it is actually two-handed. So I wonder if that's a thing too. If you have a bag or an umbrella or something, and it could get out of hand quickly, I think. But
yeah, I think you just tap it and then it activates and then you put it down. But if you're gonna have one handful, then just grab your phone and just do it with the phone. But I do think the phone will actually be slower, and that will be less convenient for the tube.
Yeah. I also like the closing quote on his tweet, but no opening quote. But
yeah,
what can you do? Tim Cook is going to tweet the way he tweets.
And he tweets however he wants to tweet, and it's always to your upset.
It's true.
So I will report back in a couple of weeks with even more out-of-date impressions about Apple Pay, because they're already out of date because it's been in the US for so long, and now it's already in the UK, and I still can't use it for another couple of weeks. But when I do, you guys are going to hear all about it.
I'm excited.
Take a break?
Yes.
This week's episode of Connected is brought to you by Igloo, the internet you'll actually like. With Igloo, you don't have to be stuck or even chained to your desk to get your own work done in the way that you want to get it done. If you've ever looked at your intranet and thought, whoever has designed this must truly hate me and everyone that I know, this is what Igloo can help you with. Igloo allow you to create an intranet that can be used anywhere and will look the way that you want. You can manage your task list from your laptop during a meeting, share status updates from your phone as you're leaving a client's site, and access the latest version of a file from home. You can even do this in your pajamas if you want, and you can do all of this in an environment that looks and acts the way that you want it to. Igloo is really configurable. You can give your Igloo its own look and feel. You can rebrand it completely, give it the colors and the fonts and the logos that you want to put on there, and you can use their great drag and drop widget editor to build your own teams with their own functionality. So let's say the accountancy team and the design team and the development team in your company, they all need to have their Igloo configured in specific ways that make sense for the way that they work, where you can very, very easily do this. With our mobile lives these days as well, people are increasingly wanting to use their own apps, like their own storage apps and stuff like that, like Dropbox and Box and stuff like that, because they have their own workflows that they work in. Well, one of the problems of doing this is, whilst it helps people feel like they're being more productive, and I'm sure that they are, what it does is it scatters documents across different platforms and takes them out of the secured environments that you set up in a company. Well, Igloo fights this and wins by bringing those services inside of your Igloo. So Igloo allows you to integrate Box, Google Drive, and Dropbox into their big, easy-to-secure platform. They have 256-bit encryption, single sign-on, and support for Active Directory integrations. This is all stuff that people that need security for their system will love to hear, because it's all there. And with Igloo as well, you can also share files with your coworkers with their own tools. They have their own collaboration system where you can upload files and people can comment on them and download them, and you can also track who's read them as well with read receipts. It's time to break away from the internet that you hate. Go and sign up for Igloo right now, and you can try it out for free with any team of up to 10 people for as long as you like. Sign up right now at igloosoftware.com/connected. Thank you so much to Igloo for their support of this show and Relay FM.
Alrighty, so up next in our series of mini topics, NASA, to this morning, going back to the space thing for a second, NASA's 3 billion mile journey to Pluto is at its peak today. So if you've been watching the news today, I'm sure you've seen, there's a link in the show notes as well, this image of Pluto, really the first up-close image that humanity has seen of the dwarf planet. It used to be a planet, not a planet anymore. And it's really quite something to look at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's space stuff is always weird to me, like because I don't know an awful amount about space, as was demonstrated on Upgrade this week, talking about like the build up to this. And like I look at these things, like I look at that picture of Pluto, and like one of my first thoughts was like, how is it illuminated so well? And I was like, hang on a minute, the sun does that. And like, because you look at a picture like this, and it's like, it's perfectly illuminated, and everything else around it is complete darkness. Darkness like you've never seen in your life. And it's like, how is it so perfect? And then you realize that, like the space of space, right? Just the vast emptiness of nothing. It's like, no, you can't see anything else because there's nothing else.
Right.
Like, and it's just, I look at these things, and it's like, it's so interesting, and it's also so weird. And now that I'm looking at Pluto, I can see the outline of Pluto. That has been a thing today that's been going around the internet. I don't know if you've seen this. That like what they call it, the heart of Pluto, right? Is what it's being.
Yeah, I'll put a tweet about it in the show notes for us.
But it does kind of look like the outline of Pluto the dog now. Now that I see this. But yeah, it really is kind of an incredible, crazy thing.
It is. It's I could talk about space stuff all day, but the fact that we sent basically a robot the size of a piano to Pluto, and it took 9 years to get there, and it does 36,000 miles an hour, which is pretty quick. It just really is nuts. And so today, July 14th, the spacecraft is actually silent. It can't talk to us and take pictures and work at the same time. So it is working because it is flying past Pluto. It's not orbiting anything. It's basically going past it on its way further out. And so starting tonight and then tomorrow, NASA will be in a 16-month download period of all this information that's gathering today. So, if you thought that your torrent of BattleBots was slow, 16 months to download images and mapping and stuff is really sort of a crazy thing that we can send data at all, but it's like a couple of kilobytes a second. It's not super quick.
So what kind of information is it actually getting then?
So a lot of it is imagery. A lot of it is looking at Pluto's atmosphere to see. It's long believed that Pluto has an atmosphere, but probably very thin. And so they're taking measurements and looking at that. Some of that will happen once it's past, once it's on the back edge of Pluto. It will look at it from a couple different angles and see maybe what the atmosphere could be made of, how robust it is, to see if there's thoughts that there might be subterranean oceans, probably not of water, but of some other materials. And so looking at just kind of discovering the makeup of this dwarf planet, because Pluto is actually part of a series of basically icy objects at the edge of the solar system. Pluto is the biggest, and so we're seeing what they can learn of this particular example, and maybe they can take that knowledge and spread it elsewhere. So it's nuts. And I think, like you looking at that photo, the thing to me about this whole thing is that it took 9 years to get there. It took something like 4.5 hours for data to come back to us at basically the speed of light. And it's just the scale of it all, that, this thing launched a decade ago, and they've just been hanging out waiting for it to get there. And they have, basically 24 hours of like experimentation, and then they're gonna move on to a couple of their objects. They haven't said what yet. But it's like all this lead up for a very intense period of time, and then this data will slowly trickle in. Is just really just that sort of scale of it is what always gets me when it comes to space stuff.
How are they sending the data?
NASA has something called the Deep Space Network. Maybe we can find a Wikipedia article. And basically it is set up where NASA and like the ESA and I believe other agencies can use this as well.
ESA represent.
That's right. ESA. So the DSN basically is set up where we can listen out on all sides of the Earth, because the Earth obviously is rotating actually fairly quickly. And so it's basically just long-range radio signals that is vastly understating it because I'm actually not an expert on the DSN.
It's extremely long range.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, if you think about Voyager, which is even further out than this thing is, the Voyager has actually, depending what articles you read, actually left the solar system last year, and is actually kind of in this intermediate space, and we can still get data back from it. So it's basically like a modem on top of a really tall building, and we listen, and these things talk back to us. It's very slow, but apparently very reliable for the most part. So props to the people who invented it, because it seems like an impossible problem to solve to me.
So what does the Voyager do then?
So Voyager looked at other big planets. So it didn't get to look at Pluto, but looked at Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And it is now sort of jettisoned from the solar system, and we are learning about what takes place outside the solar system. There's kind of like an envelope of material and radiation and energy around the sun, and it has passed through that. And for the first time ever, we are seeing the solar system from the outside. And it's pretty cool. And the Voyager has a gold record on it, so you can listen to some sweet tunes if you're an alien and come across Voyager 1 or 2.
Man, I don't know about any of this stuff. Like, it's very, very interesting to hear, and I'm very interested to hear about it. I just don't know any of it, you know? Like, because it doesn't like break through my purview very often.
Yeah.
Like, it's just when something like this happens.
Right.
You know?
And this has been, I mean, all over the news today, and like it's really captivated people because it unlike like in the 70s and 80s when some of this other stuff was going on, even the 90s, like we haven't seen this sort of exploration really sort of in like mine and yours time. Like something happened when we were real little, but it's been kind of quiet. And so I think for us as like adults, you know, in this time period to see something, you know, see this image, you know, I saw it on Twitter for the first time this morning. Like this Pluto image has been circulating today. NASA tweeted it. It's like, hey, like that's just crazy, right? That like we were talking about last week with radio. I didn't sit down and watch the evening news and see this image. I saw it in Tweetbot like I was still in bed this morning. Like it's so crazy. So I think that sort of thing can break through now sort of more easily because I think people are just more open about what they're nerdy about, and that things like social media make it so much easier for data to get out. You don't have to go find the news. It sort of comes to you, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, it's cool. It's a fun day for space nerds.
So was the Voyager, it was kind of going in a different direction, right? They were sending it in.
Yes. Different trajectory, and New Horizons, the spacecraft won't catch it. Voyager has a really good head start on this. It's interesting though. I don't remember the exact numbers, but roughly it took basically 3 days for Apollo to get to the moon. And this craft got to the moon in like 9 hours, so it's traveling very quickly, but not fast enough to catch up from what I saw. I saw that on a Reddit AMA today with the NASA team.
But I guess it would on an infinite timescale, right?
Thank you, Marco.
I'm fascinated. It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. Like, it's. I think part of the reason as well, I was going to say this a moment ago, that like I think this is captivating people, is because Pluto is like more interesting to many modern people than many of the planets are because of the big furor of Pluto.
Right. Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, it's not a planet, and then everybody freaking out. Anyways, not a planet. Yeah, I think that's one reason, too, that I think that's, been in the news. And there's a lot of fun stuff about landing on comets and going to Mars, like all the stuff that we talked about a couple weeks ago. There's more space stuff happening. I think it's a fun time to be interested in this stuff.
Indeed. Where can people have you got anywhere that people can go if they want to get started with space stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are a couple blogs. Space.com is decent as long as you don't mind Their website does weird stuff, especially on mobile. There's one also called Spaceflight Insider. I actually met the editor of that when I was in Florida. And they're like at a bunch of press conferences and stuff. They've got good coverage. Those are the two that I go to for like straight up news. But NASA itself has a ton of social media, a ton of blogs just on nasa.gov that you can subscribe to. So it's easier than ever to follow along with this stuff. And I think one thing that turns people off is there's so much of it. Like if you just subscribe to like the main NASA blog, it's almost overwhelming. But you can go in there and you can look at individual things and kind of tailor the content you get. So it's fun.
So when you said Spaceflight Insider, I thought you said Spaceflight Insider, like the drink. So performed one of the weirdest Twitter searches that I've ever performed and got nothing, and then realized what I had looked for and why that was so stupid.
Spaceflight Insider.
You should start that blog now. You do the spaceflight and I'll do the cider.
Yeah. What if it was just like it was like a regular cider, right? But most ciders have like pictures of trees or like apples or something on them, and instead of just a spaceship, and it just is like a regular cider just with a different badge. I think that's our new business.
Oh dear. So just before we went on the air today, I saw some great Federico news and figured that I had to bring it up. As of today, via an update on the App Store, the official Twitter app on the iPhone now has the native share sheet built in.
It's about time, guys. Way to go.
I don't understand this.
Why does Twitter do anything that they do? So a lot of people have been complaining recently. They do A/B testing in the app, so some subset of users, like the tweet button will be in a different place, or this other feature will be over here. It's like none of the options seem good. Like they just keep fiddling with things, and there's never any improvement.
So, but like the weird thing about this is like, you've got this point where it's like there has to have been a decision that they made internally as to why they decided not to support this. There has to be one. Whether it makes sense or not, that's not for me or you to decide. We just know that there was a decision because they didn't do it. So when I see something like this, it's like, well, now something's changed, but nothing changed externally in between iOS 8 and today. It's like, I'd see something like this, and I'm like, why did you do it? Like, what took you so long in the first place? Like, why didn't you want to do it? And why now? Like, today they brought this new functionality where the links look slightly different. They're formatted slightly differently. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, there has been a change in their system, but it doesn't seem like it's enough of a change to warrant overhauling the way that they share links. So it's like, I don't understand.
Yeah, maybe Dick Costello was just really anti-share sheet.
Could be the only thing, right? Because that's a change. I
mean, you got to wonder, like, was it something politically, internally that was causing the delay? I think it's ridiculous. And we've talked a lot about the Twitter app, and not to bring all that back up, but like, they're just not good. They're just not good citizens on iOS or Android. Really, the Android app's not very good either.
Or the Mac.
Yeah, anywhere really, except the web. And even the web app, like I'm logging into it now, is it's just not like it's the old URL or the old style. And I can tweet from that, but then if I go to my profile, it looks different, but I can't tweet from there. Like, it's what are you doing? It's not a complicated thing what Twitter does. Like, just make it better. Let's make it better.
It's impossible to understand how some of these companies work, and currently, Twitter is really one of them, and that might be why they're in the situation that they just lost their CEOs, because they are so incomprehensible.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's there now if you want it. The iPad doesn't have it, and the iPad app today removed the Discover tab. That was what the iPad got. The iPad got the removal of a feature, and the iPhone got a feature that people actually want.
There's no rhyme or reason to it. And you would think that on one hand, that new leadership, that a new CEO could come in and say, "Hey, look, we're gonna make our apps the best that we can." There's no reason that the first party client shouldn't be the best one. But the reality is, on any platform, there's better third party alternatives, and that's, if I were coming into Twitter as leadership, that seems like a really bad sign of something internally that's just not gone right. Either they don't see the value in it, which is concerning, or they're unable to affect change. Like I'm sure there were people who wanted that share sheet there on day one and who were fighting for it, but for some reason that couldn't happen. And whatever process or whatever step along the way has prevented them from making their apps good, like that should be concerning if you're in charge over there.
Well, sure, because like once Apple implement, or like people were doing their own versions of share sheets, right? And you have to do whatever you have to do to keep that up to date and keep that with additional functionality, except for and etc. As soon as Apple brings in a feature like this, it's surely easier for you to just implement that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? With developer resources, it must just be easier, right? To just say, right, well, we'll just use this new API now, and then we have a share sheet that we don't have to maintain anymore, and we don't have to add functionality to or remove functionality from, like it just is. So they were having, I'm sure, to work harder to keep it. Like it seems, it just, I don't understand the way that these big companies work. But from working in a big company, in my previous life, I know that it was some dumb decisions made by some dumb people because they thought that their revenue was tied up in the share sheet.
Yeah, that's what made or break it. Just that one feature. No, it's sad, and it's puzzling as to why they continue down this path. But we'll just see how that goes, I guess.
Yep. We most definitely will. Okie dokie. Shall we move on? Thank our second sponsor.
Let's do it.
This week's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Harry's. For many of us, shaving is a pain. It can be uncomfortable, it can cause nicks and cuts and scrapes and even razor burn, and razor blades today can be super expensive as well. That's not a great start for a thing, right? You don't want any of this stuff. Like, why would you want to have to deal with any of this stuff? So this is what Harry's helps with. Harry's is a company that was started to try and remove as many of these things as possible. Harry's make their own blades, so they know that they're great quality blades. They're made by a great factory in Germany that Harry's owns, and they offer these high quality razor blades at about half the price of other big brand blades. They ship for free to your front doorstep. You're not going to get to the checkout and see a big charge added on for shipping because they ship for free. And Harry's starter set is an amazing deal at just $15. So the first time you're going to use Harry's, you're going to want to grab a razor, you're going to want to grab some blades, you'll get 3 of them, and you'll want to grab either their moisturizing shave cream or firming shave gel. They know this, so they package it up into one lovely little set, and for $15 you can get it for yourself, and in a moment I'm going to tell you how you can get it for $10. On average, an everyday shaver who uses Harry's products will save $150 each and every year. With Harry's, your satisfaction is guaranteed, because that is something that is so important to them. And this comes through in the stuff that they make. They make great products that all work really well. They have a great feel to them. They feel great on the skin. They have great products as well that they make. I mentioned their moisturizing shave cream and firming shave gel. I've used them both. They're both great. They both smell really great. I'm more a fan of the foaming shave gel simply because I think that a gel that turns into a foam is kind of cool. I just like that. I also use their moisturizer that they make, which is really nice. It smells really great. I use that every day. I don't shave every day, as anybody can tell. I keep a beard, and I use Harry's razors to keep myself trim, to keep my beard line trim, but I do use their moisturizer. I use that very often, and I really, really like it. It protects my face and keeps it looking and feeling good. You can go and experience a clean, close, comfortable shave for yourself with Harry's. Go to harrys.com and you'll be able to get $5 off your first purchase if you use the code CONNECTED with your first purchase. That's harrys.com and enter the coupon code CONNECTED and you'll save that $5 off and start shaving better today. Thank you so much to Harry's for their support of this show.
So up next, we're going to talk about backups a little bit. We're going to talk about this last week, but ran over, so we thought we'd slot it in here in our sort of grab bag. Middle of July, there's no news type show. So I read about backups 5 years ago, which was a moment for me of like, holy cow, my site has been around a while. But I thought it'd be time to sort of revisit my strategy because the landscape has shifted a little bit. So I sort of have three key tenets when it comes to having a good backup. A backup should be redundant, so you have more than one backup for a couple different reasons. The sort of the one I call out, I think the most common one is if your time machine drive is plugged in on your desk next to your iMac and something happens to that desk, power surge, a fire, somebody breaks in and steals your stuff, your data and your backup were only about 4 feet away from each other, and that's no good. So you can do that, but if you have a secondary backup somewhere else, you're protected in that way. It should be easy to manage. No one wants a backup system that is a pain in the rear to use because the truth is you just won't use it. Apple discovered this early on in Time Machine, which rolled out with OS X Leopard. Super easy. You plug in a drive, you say, yes, use this for Time Machine, and then you're done with it. You don't have to worry about, is it working, is it not working, did I forget to run it? Time Machine just takes care of itself, and that's really key for any backup Time Machine and beyond, that it's easy to manage. And third one, it should be testable, that you should be able to go in and retrieve data on some sort of basis to make sure that everything's working correctly. Again, something Time Machine does well. I can go in and I can pull, a folder from my desktop from 3 weeks ago. But if you're looking at something like a bootable backup or other things, that make sure that it's actually doing what you expect it to. So when you do need it, when you do have a disk failure or data loss, you're not then surprised that your strategy has failed you. I think those three laws of backup at least have served me well over the years. We can get into the details. Like there's a link in the show notes, which you can find somewhere on the internet, I believe.
They're over at relay.fm/connected/48 this time.
Look at you. The number's different every week if you haven't been paying attention. So you can find this link and you can read through kind of what I'm doing specifically. But those are kind of the three things that come to mind: redundancy, ease of use, and testability. I think if you look at those things and those are the metrics you use, at that point, the details are not irrelevant, but are less important. So, for instance, I'm using Time Machine as sort of my immediate local backup, and then I use Arc and Amazon Cloud Drive as my offsite, and then I also have a set of drives that my MacBook Pro and my Synology at home are cloned to every couple weeks, and those are stored offsite in a secure location. So it's multi-layered, right? If my Time Machine that sits on my desk, it's right here. I can touch it. If this desk goes away with my laptop on it, I'm okay. I've got a redundancy somewhere else. It's easy to use. Arc and Time Machine are all very easy to use. Super Duper, which is what I use to back up off-site, easy to use. And I don't have to worry about like configurations or making sure that all these little knobs are twisted to the right way and levers are pulled. It all just works. And then it's all testable. I can go get data from any of these sources at any time I want and see that everything is behaving correctly.
So I feel like I'm going to say something dangerous right now. I think your system is crazy.
So Federico said that. I was reading the Mac Story email, which if you haven't subscribed to, you should definitely go read it. It's a great email newsletter he puts out on Fridays. and he linked to it, which I didn't know he was going to do. And he said, Stephen Hackett's backup strategy for OS 10 is all kinds of paranoid and wonderful at the same time. Which I chuckled, and actually I sent him a little note. I said, you caught me off guard, and I LOL'd while reading a newsletter on my iPad. So, how so?
There's too much going on here. Like, there is so many things happening to the point that you have to draw a diagram for it to make any sense to people.
I did draw a diagram, but it's very simple. I did it in MindNode, which is great for this sort of stuff.
It's not simple. It's not simple. Right, so where does the Synology get its data from?
So the Synology houses our family iTunes library. So if I buy, we bought Interstellar the other night, and on the Apple TV, and the iTunes library is stored on the Synology. So now there's a copy of Interstellar on my Synology. Synology also houses like archives of stuff, so everything Relay produces gets downloaded automatically to the Synology. All of my disk images and stuff, because I'm still doing some tech consulting, all that sort of stuff is there. So it's sort of just a grab bag of big files I've collected over the years.
And what is offsite USB clone?
So if you read a little bit further down, I keep external, like still USB drives, and I clone the Synology over to that drive, and I keep it off-site. So it is getting backed up to Amazon Cloud Drive, even though that's taking forever. But I have a complete copy of my Synology stored elsewhere. So if the Synology goes away or the house burns down or gets hit by lightning on a day like today, all that data is elsewhere, safe and sound.
Okay, so the Synology, right? This is fine to me. That all makes sense.
Okay.
All right, I just wanted to lay all that out there first.
Okay.
The Synology has data on it which isn't anywhere else.
Correct.
So it makes sense. That was why I asked, where is its data coming from? Because if everything was just coming from your MacBook, then that was crazy to me.
The Synology houses stuff that is, I have 4.5 terabytes in use. It's way bigger than I could put on any one machine. So it's sort of the central hub of all of our stuff.
Right. So, and then it is offsite by USB, which I've always found offsite backups peculiar. I know, like physical offsite backups, I've always found those peculiar. I know why people do them, but I would just not do that.
Yeah. So I could address that real quickly. You can, like, backing this thing up to Amazon Cloud Drive, which if you haven't checked out, it's $60 a year. It's unlimited storage and bandwidth. It's stored on AWS. Like, great service. That would suffice for the offsite backup if my house gets burned down, it gets hit by lightning, and the thing gets cooked. Then my data is outside of my home. So either one serves as an offsite backup. The reason I do both is that the USB clone is immediately available, where Amazon Cloud Drive, like if my Synology goes up in flames, I can get that 4.5 terabytes back from Amazon, but it's going to take forever to download all that again. And so for me, the Amazon Cloud Drive is like a super rainy day where something has happened to the Synology and the offsite drive for some reason. It's my safety net. So you can choose one or the other, and there's a lot of good services to do this. One reason I chose Amazon Cloud Drive is because Synology can talk to it natively. I don't have to run an app somewhere else and then pipe my data through a Mac Mini somewhere. But the Synology OS can talk directly to Amazon Cloud Drive, just built in. Which was a big factor in choosing it as my offsite cloud solution.
Okay.
Yes, the MacBook Pro is complicated.
And this is where it gets crazy.
Okay.
Because, so, you have on your MacBook Pro, you have 2 different time machines.
Yes.
Right? One which is via local USB, and one which is hosted on your Synology.
Yes.
Both at home, right?
The local, the time machine, it's a external hard drive plugged in my MacBook Pro, is at work. So even though I'm working for myself now, or sort of, and then definitely will be at the end of the month, I have office space that's not in the home, and so that time machine drive sits here on the desk. Again, it's right here. It's right there. The idea of having time machine at work, at the office, and at home is that my data may change. Sometimes drastically, especially if I'm editing a show or something, can drastically change over the course of a couple of days. And I might be at work, I might be at the office, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, maybe. I don't really know yet. And so the Time Machine on the Synology is relatively new, I know that I will be home and that the MacBook Pro will be at home and plugged in. And so I've got Time Machine both places just to make sure that at least one of them is the most up to date.
So this would make sense if it wasn't then for an off-site bootable USB clone updated bi-weekly with SuperDuper.
Yes. So the
it's like, explain yourself.
Okay, no, it's fine. So SuperDuper, which we should put in the show notes, is a great utility. I can do lots of things. I use it as, hey, I want just a bootable snapshot because Time Machine is not bootable. So if the SSD of my MacBook Pro were to croak, or I needed to ship it off and had a loaner machine or something, it would be a little bit of work to install OS 10 and then like restore Time Machine backup, and that's all doable. And but I wanted something I get up and running quickly because this is my only machine. It's a production machine here at Relay. My entire livelihood now goes through this MacBook Pro, and so to have something where I can get back up and running quickly is important to me. Now you might say, well, Stephen, if it's only updated bi-weekly, your data might not be completely, up to date, and that's okay. Really, this drive just exists, so I have something that I can boot off of and have my software and have my settings and have everything if I need to be up and running quickly after some sort of disaster.
You could get a Mac up and running really quickly.
No, I can.
Without any data on it.
And out of all of the 4 little sprockets shooting out of the MacBook Pro, like this is the one that could probably go away, and like I not really realize it because I already have an offsite physical backup because I'm backing up at work and at home. So I already have like a physical disk at each location with my data. It's already offsite in that way. This really is sort of a legacy part of my backup system that I've kept around just in case, because I have the hard disk already and it's already set up, so I can just plug it in and do it.
And where do you keep this?
I can't tell you that.
Really, where do you keep it?
It's safe and sound somewhere.
Come on. Where is it kept? Is it at a family member's house, an office?
It is at a family member's house. It is not at the home or the office.
Okay. And then you also have Amazon Cloud Drive.
Yes.
Why?
It's I'm using it as opposed to something like CrashPlan or Backblaze, both of which are great, regardless of their sponsorship status or not. CrashPlan and Backblaze are both really good services. And if you need offsite cloud backup, like go check them out. They're easy to use. They're really cheap. I switched over to Amazon Cloud Drive very recently because I was already paying for it to back the Synology up to it. And so for me, when I set it up for the Synology, it was just a simplification of, I can also back up the MacBook Pro to it. Because I was using CrashPlan up until this point. I use ARQ, which is it's one of those little pieces of Mac software that's just delightful for like I'm sure the very small number of people who use it. You can back up to S3, Dropbox, Google Drive, all sorts of crazy stuff. And I have my home folder backing up to it, just over the Wi. If I'm at home or I'm at work, I'm on the Wi-Fi. It's just backing up, just my home folder. Again, like the Synology Cloud backup, this is a truly worst case scenario. Like my house burns down while my offsite drives are in it, because I have to bring those home and update them. Or if for some reason I've got Time Machine issues or something like that where I need something that's sort of outside Apple system, it's available to me on Amazon Cloud Drive, and Arc encrypts it all. And so I just install Arc, decrypt the files, and download them, and can go from there.
All of this just seems like too much to me.
It is a lot. There's no getting around that. But for me, there's a subset of my day that if it were to go away, I would be okay with it because it's not stuff that I actively need. A lot of that's now on the Synology. So, for instance, I have a bunch of like OS 10 installers from I think all the way back to like the public beta. I don't need those, but I like to have them around because I write about this stuff and it's handy. If that directory were to go away, I can rebuild that. I can get those installers again if I need them. So there's sort of that level of data. But on the other hand, a lot of my data in some ways is irreplaceable. So things like my photo library cannot be recreated, right? I can't make my kids be babies again and do that cute thing they did 3 years ago. So for me, that sort of data, documents I'm currently working on, so things like I'm writing, drafts I'm working on, projects that Mike that you and I do that might not be in Google Drive that I might have locally for some reason. That sort of stuff, editing a podcast, that sort of stuff is irreplaceable. And so for me, like, because this thing is redundant, because it's easy to use, like, I don't touch any of other than like bringing the offsite USB drives home every couple weeks. There's nothing I have to do. Like, I pause Arc and Time Machine if I'm recording, but that's about it. And so it's not like it's this weight on my shoulders that I have to worry about, that make sure all my backup things are going. But it is a weight off my shoulders knowing that, hey, you know what? Like, if my photo library were to go away, it is on my machine, on Dropbox, 1, 2, 3 other places, 4 other places, because I need to make sure that those things are safe and sound. So, any other questions?
I have some, but they're not related to your Mac.
Okay.
So I want to talk about how I back up my Mac.
Yes.
But before we do that, let me take a break.
Sounds good.
This week's episode is also brought to you by Squarespace. You can start building your website today by visiting squarespace.com and using the offer code WORLD at checkout, and you'll save yourself 10%. That's Squarespace. Build it beautiful. When it comes to finding a place for yourself on the internet, you should go to squarespace.com, because they give you all of the tools that you need without you having to worry about any of the stuff that you don't want to have to worry about. Like, when it comes to building a website, there's a reason you want to do it. Like, whether you want to sell something, or you want to promote something, or you want to write something, or you want to show off your artwork or something like that. You don't want to have to worry about, right, so I better go find a host, and then I better start writing some code, or find something, or install something and patch it, and all that kind of stuff. Like, most people, and I include myself in this, and many people that I know that are very nerdy people, including Steven, just don't want to have to worry about looking after things like that. Having to tinker with things like that actually detract from getting the work done that you want to do to actually have the website in the first place. And this is what Squarespace enables you to be able to do. You can build a site that looks professionally designed regardless of your skill level, without any coding required. They have intuitive, easy to use tools, and they can make your website look and feel exactly how you want without compromising on the way it looks. Like, it's always going to look great because their tools are just great. They have state-of-the-art technology that they use to power your website, and they ensure security and stability, and they are trusted by millions of people and companies all around the world. Their site templates are absolutely fantastic to look at. They all feature responsive web design built right in, so they look great on desktop, they look great on mobile, they look great on tablets as well. But this is just getting started with Squarespace. They have tons of other awesome features. They have their commerce platform where you can sell your own stuff, physical and digital goods. We use it to power the Relay store, and we also power the Relay blog with Squarespace as well, because they built that stuff better than we could even ever imagine that we would want to be able to do ourselves. They have rock solid fast hosting. They have 24/7 support through live chat and email. They have teams located in New York, Dublin, and Portland who are there to help you. They have their dev platform, so if you do want to tinker with things, you can take your Squarespace site further than ever before, but then by using their dev tools if you really, really want to. And you can also get your own free domain name as well if you sign up for an account with them for a year. Squarespace plans start at just $8 a month, and you can sign up for a free trial right now by going to squarespace.com. And when you do decide to sign up for a plan, make sure that you use the offer code WORLD. It's going to get you 10% off your first purchase, and it'll also show your support for this show. Thank you so much to Squarespace for being such a continued supporter of Relay FM. Squarespace, build it beautiful.
They're the best.
They are the best. So, I had never really bothered with too much backup stuff. It's just not really something that I ever fussed with too much, much to your dismay. But I have kind of got that in check a bit more now, but it's still nowhere near close to what you do. So my backup is kind of split into a few different things like yours is. So I have 2 machines. I don't have any servers or anything like that at home. I have my MacBook Pro and I have the Mac Pro. The MacBook Pro is backed up to Backblaze. That's what I use. Backblaze is a past sponsor. It is a future sponsor, but it is the company that I choose to back up my data to because it's the one that I like the most. I think their tools are very simple. It's easy for me to schedule things. I have a bad internet connection, so uploading can throttle me, and I really like their scheduling tools. My internet connection is terrible. I get sometimes it can be about 2 megabits up, is what I get on a good day.
No good.
I'm lucky if I get one, so it's really important to me to have a tool that can enable me to very easily pause things, which I can do, and also to schedule things as well, so it doesn't interrupt at the times when I'm most productive, right? Like when I'm trying to actually get work done, and just literally because I'm uploading a file to Dropbox or I'm uploading some files to Backblaze, I cannot load web pages. So it's very important to me that I have good tools like Backblaze that allow me to schedule things, so that's why I use them. So that's what I have there. My MacBook Pro, I use Backblaze for it. That's all, right? The Mac Pro has a Time Machine drive attached to it. That's all that has. Now, I have two reasons for this. Again, the Mac Pro has very, very large files on it. Very large files, multiple gigabyte files. I can't have that upload to the cloud.
Right.
Because the Mac Pro actually is tethered to a mobile LTE hotspot.
It's a big game over after one backup.
Yep, cannot do it because I have to pay quite a lot of money just to be able to transfer some of the files around that we transfer around every week for all the different shows and the multiple gigabytes of audio. But my key thing in all of this is the most important stuff for me is in Dropbox.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all my files are. Every file that I need to worry about is in Dropbox. So much so that when I had a hard drive, not a hard drive failure, when I poured liquid into my computer and it killed the hard drive along with everything else, I didn't feel like I lost anything. I have never to this day felt like there was something that I lost because everything was in Dropbox. I mean, now it's also in Backblaze as well, so I'm doubling that, which is great. I recently as well, you don't know if you know this, I pay for Dropbox now.
Good.
That's, congratulations to me, right?
Oh, it's good. Yeah, I do. I've paid it for a couple of years. It's one of those things like a terabyte of space is crazy. No one will ever use it, but
yeah, I don't need it. Because, a terabyte is bigger than either of the hard drives, right? Jason spoke about this before. That's bigger than either of the SSDs that I have in either of my machines.
Yeah.
But I was just too frequently bumping up against limits, so I was just like, forget it, I'm just going to pay for it. A lot of the stuff that you put on your Synology, mm-hmm. I don't have. That data doesn't exist to me, the media stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have movies that I can't re-download. I don't have music that I don't stream or can re-download, and all of my photos go to Dropbox.
Mm-hmm.
So they're stored locally on my machines, they're stored in Dropbox, they're stored in iCloud. They're also stored in Google Photos. So, that is all over the place. And that all kind of works for me. I love having Time Machine on the Mac Pro. I'm not kidding you. In the last 3 weeks, on 2 separate occasions, I've had to use Time Machine to get files from folders that are on my desktop. Because I put Scratch files and Logic files and stuff like that. They just go on to my desktop, right? Because after about 2 or 3 days, I never need a Logic file again. They're just not needed.
Right.
I've never ever needed to go back to a Logic file after 3 months or whatever, even after a week.
Yeah.
Once the show's out there, it's kind of that's all it ever needs to be. But there are times where I might need to grab an audio file, or I accidentally deleted a couple of audio files from my desktop a couple of weeks ago, and I was able to go in and grab them both on separate occasions using Time Machine, which is great. I've also as well, again, I don't know what's been happening to me recently in the last couple of weeks, used Dropbox's fantastic versioning.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's just incredibly good. And one of those occasions was simply just because it was easier for me to get that rather than ask someone to send me a file.
Mm-hmm.
I had shared a file with someone, they had the file that I needed, but I deleted it from my folder because I didn't need it anymore. But it was just easy for me to just go in, log in, restore it. It downloads in like 20 seconds, and I'm good to go again. That is effectively my backup strategy. It is partly because of constraints that I have. Like, if I had fast internet, then I would also be putting the Mac Pro onto Backblaze as well. But I just can't do that because it's not possible for me to do it with the internet situation that I have. And I don't want to be. I don't have a dock or anything for my MacBook Pro. So I don't plug it in to back it up to Time Machine, but my MacBook Pro, when I open Finder like Dropbox, I set that to open because that's where all my files are. Like, I don't put anything that I need anywhere on my MacBook Pro other than Dropbox. Like, it's just where my files go. So I don't need to worry about it. I don't have any media stored on this machine. Like, it's not an issue for me. So for the way that I look at it, the Dropbox is the great place for it. And then my Dropbox is backed up to the Time Machine because it's via the Mac Pro.
Right, it's there as well.
Yep. And it's also in Backblaze.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way with Dropbox. I mean, besides Logic stuff, because I don't have a separate editing machine, my photos, major document stuff are in Dropbox. And it's a really good point about their versioning systems. If a file gets changed or removed or something, you can go back and find it. Now, it's not. It doesn't last forever. There is a limit to the extent of versioning Dropbox will do. But for the sort of situation you were in, like, hey, I just need to grab this thing. I knew it was here a couple of days ago, whatever. It's really good, and you can just restore it. And it's pretty great, and it's, I think, relatively new. They haven't had it forever, but it's definitely a nice feature if you're looking at Dropbox as sort of a cloud storage provider.
Yeah, and as Joe Steele said in the chat room, Dropbox versions aren't forever, which is true. And then he also corrected himself by saying, but they're on my Time Machine. Right, so I have this weird setup, right, that kind of, via the two machines that I have, I feel pretty safe about my data. Because they are, yes, both in the same physical space. They actually sit next to each other. They are literally next to each other. At some points, they bang into each other. But the data is kind of split across two different cloud services, two SSDs, and a hard drive. Like, it all meets around. I don't have like the off-site bootable backup like you do, but it's not an issue for me. I just need to wait for a very, very slow Dropbox download to occur.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end of the world. Like, I could just wait for it. I could just set it over a couple of nights, and I'll have everything back. It is what it is. But considering the constraints that I have, this system works really well for me.
No, I think you're a good example of, like, of those three rules. I think you meet the criteria where it you don't have an off-site, but it is redundant in a sense that the main data on your MacBook Pro is also somewhere else. So that's redundant to a degree, easy to manage, and, it's testable. You've been testing it the last couple of weeks, as some might say. And so I think that's sort of like the key here. Like, no one, like, doing something is better than doing nothing. Like, if you look at my article and say, well, holy cow, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm just not going to do anything. Like, that's the wrong approach. It's all about finding what works for you in your budget or in what hardware you have available to you, or Mike, in your situation with your upload speed being abysmal. Like, you can't do anything about that, unfortunately. And so you have to live within the constraints that it gives you. And you've done that by doing a hotspot for recording on Skype. But it's just a matter of fact. You just can't push gigabytes of stuff over to the cloud over that connection. And so I think things like Dropbox, while I don't really like the idea of syncing like software type stuff being a backup, in reality it sort of is. I've got issues with it, but it gets your data somewhere else. And that's really the key thing here, where if your data is just on one machine, your data is temporary. It's the way it is. Because things fail, you drop a Coke on it, it gets stolen off the subway. Like, just the life happens to these devices. And so So to have that data elsewhere on the Mac, at least, is not as necessarily easy as iOS, but it's definitely doable and definitely sustainable if you set it up correctly.
Yep.
So
completely. So I said I had another question for you, which is iOS devices.
mm-hmm.
Like, there's not really much you can do there.
Yeah, I mean, I back mine up to iCloud. I pay for like the lowest tier iCloud space because they're stingy. And my iPad and iPhone back up to iCloud. If I do a big software update, so like between versions, or if I go to the beta, I will do a backup to iTunes and just set that aside. Because if you say you upgrade from iOS 8 to iOS 9, and for some reason you need to go back, which is very difficult, but if you do, your iCloud backup might be iOS 9 only. At times that's been true, other times it hasn't been. And so the only thing you really can do there is use iCloud and then use iTunes as needed.
So really surprises me that you don't have a bi-weekly or monthly regular backup to iTunes.
I mean, for me, like...
But and the reason I say this, I know because I know what you're about to say, that you don't generate a lot of data or create a lot of data on the device. But considering how many different ways you back up what's on your Mac, like 5 different ways, basically, I am just surprised you don't at least do this every now and then.
I also sync my devices, including purchases, to iTunes, like a lot more than I think Apple wants me to. And so, if I needed to restore from iCloud, then I could plug it into iTunes and sync my apps back over. And so I'm sort of halfway there. But yeah, I see what you're saying. I definitely see what you're getting at.
I'm worried that I'm causing some kind of nightmare now, and you're reaching for a USB cable.
Open my to-do list here and just make a repeating task.
iOS devices for me, it's kind of, and I do create a lot of data on them, but it's kind of just like, it goes to iCloud. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, if I had to rebuild an iOS device from scratch, like my photos all get sucked up to Dropbox automatically, so, and iCloud Photo Stream, even though I'm not using Photos anymore. Different topic, but if my iPad disappeared and my iCloud backup was 3 weeks old, like it wouldn't be the end of the world. Where on the Mac it might be, depending on what I'm working on. So yeah, it would be nice to have, some other alternatives for iOS. I don't even know what they would be. I don't see them saying, "Oh, if you have a Synology, you can back your iOS device up to your Synology." Like that's just not going to happen. But the iCloud backup's really good. I haven't really ever had issues out of it, so I'll give Apple props there. That what they have included, like on the Mac with Time Machine, works pretty well most of the time. I haven't ever had big issues with either Time Machine or iCloud backup on iOS, so I think they're doing something right there.
Is it weird that there isn't iCloud for the Mac? Like iCloud backups for the Mac?
I don't know what they would back up. I mean, most people's user folder is going to be, tens of gigabytes, if not hundreds of gigabytes. And so, and maybe one day at this point, looking at their pricing page, like I don't know what they would charge for it. I mean, my home folder at the time of this article is probably the same. Yeah, about 310 gigs. That's a lot of data, and Apple is just not a big data company like Amazon or Backblaze or CrashPlan. It'd be great if they get there. I think they might one day, but I'm not surprised they haven't done it yet.
Because, they could at least just back up, because they would know what media they wouldn't have to back up, right? They could build a tool in OS X that would be like, we don't need to back up this movie.
Right.
Because we know it's already in iTunes,
Agreed.
I don't know. It's something to think about, but it is kind of just like we give you this thing that you can plug in. Other than that, go elsewhere. I think that's probably how they think about it.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. Have you got anything else? I think that about wraps it up for me.
I think that's it.
Cool. If you want to find our show notes for this week, as we mentioned earlier, go to relay.fm/connected/48. If you want to find Stephen online, he is at 512pixels.net. Don't forget to buy his t-shirt at the moment. There's just a few more days left on that. And he is at ISMH on Twitter. I am at iMyke, IMYKE. Thanks again to our sponsors for this week, Squarespace, Harry's, and Igloo. And we'll be back next time. Thank you so much for listening. Until then, say goodbye, sir.
Adios.